Hey everyone, welcome back to Tuesday Tea with me, Alisha Bowker Mudrock. Today I have an awesome guest who is a surprise connection in my own life, and we're going to be talking about the theme of connections. This is Lauren. She has been in sales for over 16 years, using her connections and her ability to engage and really see and meet people where they're at has been such an asset to her professionally, but also personally. And I will be honest, I'm not a huge for me, it's more like I dislike everyone until I like people. And so we met just through mutual friends, and I was kind of like, okay, fine, these girls are the same
Okay, fine. It
thing.
seems fine.
And it was a very surprise. Like she really surprised me, I think, and I really opened up in a way that I don't generally do with people I've just met one or two times. And it's been a beautiful blossoming friendship ever since. So I'm so excited to have her here today and share some of her own experiences, her own wisdom, and just get to dive into just some real conversation around why connections are important, why we need them, why we might avoid them, and how to be better at making them and sustaining them. So, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. And that's so sweet. I felt the same way. We did connect very quickly and very genuinely, and that was great. And this even continues in New York and your new spot in Florida. And I love it. So this is
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. And we're not in the same state. So, that is another piece. We both are obviously very intentional people that we've
Yeah.
remained in contact and kept that connection,
Yeah.
um, which can't always be easy, but it's been very fruitful. So, I'm excited about it.
Perfect.
So I'd love to just hear from you a little bit about just like your experience and wisdom on connections in general. Any sort of like stories or examples you want to share? And I'll kind of let you take it away.
I think in general, because I can be very extroverted, it's easy for me to form a connection. But the connection that's going to take you to like a friendship or a very good working mentorship, those things actually need to be, exercise like a muscle. You have to make sure that you're saying the right things, doing the right things. And obviously a professional relationship is very different from a personal friendship.
Yeah.
But I think there are a lot of certain, foundational things that are very similar.
Mhm.
But I think in the recent last few years, I've moved to New York and I've jumped into a couple of very big roles in my life, where I had to really step outside of my comfort zone. And I do feel very empowered now. But when that relationship started with my mentor, he had just taken over this large sector of sales, which I'm in tech sales. And at the time, I was a rep who had been doing a much bigger job, a much bigger role, and getting no credit for it. And trying to assert myself and make sure that I was noticed or I was favored to potentially be in that next role. When I found out that was not going to be the case, I was in a managerial structure that did not like me very much, which is fine. Sometimes that happens. You still have to learn how to work with those people. There's still a
Yep.
connection. It's still
Yep.
important. But when you can sense that you're just being pushed down repeatedly for no other reason, I had to get creative. And I ended up trusting this vice president only because he had been super vulnerable. He had gone through a very personal win with his son getting awards and certain things that, because his son was so autistic, they never really thought was possible. And to
Wow.
watch that raw emotion, have him share that with a large team, he didn't really know many of us. I immediately was more drawn to him. Of course, I was intimidated of him and I knew he was brilliant and he was great. But that moment, when that wall came down, I was like, oh, he's human. I can relate to him. My mom has a master's in autism. She's devoted most of her life to autistic children and transitioning young adults. And we ended up having a lot to talk about that had nothing to do with work. So
Right.
that day was like a really great day where we had that foundational moment of a better rapport of just like, hey, I'm talking about this, $5 million deal I'm trying to bring in.
Right.
So when I felt like I was at my absolute limit,
Mhm.
I was extremely vulnerable. I went up to him at a big work conference. I pulled him aside and I said, I'm leaving. I can't do this anymore. And I can't be a part of this structure. And I remember him just kind of, okay, let's have a seat. Let's talk for a minute. Let me understand where you're coming from. He listened. He told me to give him 6 months. And at that point, I had to trust him when I did not really know him. And
Great.
I decided to take a bet on him. And I waited, and it was less than 6 months. He called me and asked me if I'd rather work in New York or if I'd rather work in California. Obviously I ended up in New York, so here I am. But I didn't get the job that he made me go after, which was the funny part. He,
Hmm.
teed something up for me. He was like, hey, you're gonna have to work for it. Here's this huge panel. You have to interview. You have all these people. It's a huge role. And I got second. I didn't get the job, but I was like, okay, I got second. I beat a guy that had 20. I didn't beat, I beat people that had 20 years experience. I
Right.
was like, okay, like I'm someone to mess with. Like I felt very
Right.
confident in that moment. And he did have a replacement gig, which was the life sciences role that I've stepped into now, and what moved me here to New York. And through that journey with him and that connection, I've really built myself up. And not that I wasn't confident before, but it was a different kind of confidence.
Yeah.
And I've been able to transition now into more of a professional role. And I left my old job and came to my new job now as a director of life sciences. Now I have my own team because we stayed in touch. And after he left my former employment, I was like, hi, please tell me you have something for me to do, because you're the
Yeah.
only person I want to work for. One, I know you care about people. Two, I know you care
Yeah.
about me, and you really want to do a great job. And he's just a genius. So I'm really loving the new role. I've said this to you, I think, before, but be careful what you wish for. I have all the responsibility of a new sales structure. I had to hire my whole team and building up a lot of my uh, reference architecture and other things. And it's a whirlwind, but I'm doing it on my own, and I'm doing it with people that I trust and I respect.
Yeah.
It's such a different feeling.
Yeah. Well, first of all, congratulations. Such
Thank
a
you.
awesome move and definitely well deserved. And I think you bring up some really great points around one foundational piece of connection is vulnerability, right?
Right.
That it's not just about being in contact with someone or being in the same room as someone or working on something together that brings about that deeper, more authentic connection, but it really is just two humans existing and wanting to like meet on this base level that
Yeah.
I think for a lot of reasons we don't always do. Like I alluded to earlier, right? Like I know my walls are up from just growing up in Southern California around very fake people that I'm just kind of uninterested. Like I'm more defensive before I'm vulnerable with folks. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. But I think that when that vulnerability piece can happen, it's whether it's professionally or personally or anywhere in between, that's where the magic happens, so to speak, right? That's where that actual connection really comes into play. It's not about like, yes, you respect him as a businessman, as a mentor, like he's someone to admire. But the reason you trust him, the reason you connected, the reason you were like, okay, I'm sold is because of that humanity piece
Yep.
versus how many accolades or like,
Right.
zeros he has behind his name or anything like that. Right.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And it's, well, and this is what I talk about in sales in general. I think that from a work perspective, we get so caught up in, oh, I'm trying to close this large deal or I'm trying to get this big thing. And I'm like, you're talking to a person. What do you think they care about?
Right.
Like, why are you trying to boil the ocean? Why are you trying to make this a much bigger deal than it is? Why would this person want to talk to you?
Yeah.
In general, a personal relationship. Why
That's
would
a
this
huge,
person want to talk to you?
yeah.
Do you have some sort of connection? Do you have some sort of value that you could bring to them? Or do you see like, oh, I can relate very much to them. I should probably talk to them about my story. So I think when you share, like he did, I felt like, oh, I'm going to go talk to him about my experience of being in my mom's classroom and how she's helped a lot of students his son's age, and just being able to connect and actually have that be no pressure. That's actually when you
Right.
start to decompress, you start
Right.
to be yourself. And I think that's also the other thing too, is not just vulnerability, but authenticity. Understand
Mm,
what, who you are
yeah.
versus what you're trying to seek in a connection is
Yeah.
totally different.
Yeah. And being okay, I think too, with the fact that like we're not meant to connect with everyone. It would
Oh,
be impossible. Like to have authentic and deep connections, you can only have so many because we only have so much energy and time and whatever else. So I think it's to that acceptance of really knowing yourself, to
mhm.
know your vibe, to know your people, to know where to put that energy and to hopefully foster and create those specific connections, right? We're just throwing spaghetti at a wall at everybody. That's exhausting. You're going to get more fails than wins. And you might give up. You might become more guarded or bitter or lonely or whatever else. And so I think really understanding our own energy, our own vibe, our own goals, vision, where we're at in life is what attracts the tribe or the people that we want around us, right? And like energy attracts like energy. But we
Yep.
have to be really familiar with ourselves first in order to like find that in other places.
Like send a signal out
Mhm.
when you know who you are. And by the way, that changes how many times as you go through life.
Oh,
I
yeah,
think the other thing too is when you start vibrating and you start understanding yourself at a certain level, that's when you connect with the people that you're supposed to connect with. And a
yeah,
lot of the things that I've realized in the last couple of years, that there are a lot of connections in my life that are still important that I love and cherish, but they aren't with me on this current journey because I can't hold that end of their job for them of
yeah,
this street. And I was doing a lot of that. I was doing a lot of shouldering that time and that energy because, you know, I'm the single one. I didn't have kids.
right.
You know, I was more financially stable than a lot of my friends. So I had the money to go visit. I had that. So I always felt that I was kind of holding that up. And I think during COVID, it's when I realized I was like, okay, I haven't really been living for myself. And what does that even look like?
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
was in New York and I was stuck and I didn't really have a lot to
yeah.
do.
You're
So
like,
I
I'm
thought
here.
about that a lot and who I wanted to be and what, you know, my dreams. I'm 38. My dreams aren't finished yet. I still
No,
have a lot to do.
oh my,
So
yeah,
check back in with yourself. Make sure you're surrounding yourself with people that not only are going to support your vision and be your cheerleader, but have these people done these things before? Have they had these experiences? Sometimes you need to be friends with, you know, people that are 30 years older than you and 10 years younger than you. So you can remember the energy that you had when you weren't jaded. And then you also
yeah,
remember you can, you know, get the wisdom that you're not going to get until you fail over and over again,
right,
um,
right.
and take that advice. And that's kind of where I've seated myself now, where I'm picking the people out in my life, and I can have many connections that are just social and fun, and I love to go out with them, and they're wonderful people, and I can catch up with them. But now I moved back to New York after lockdown, the pandemic. I met a huge group of people, great friends. I've now kind of consolidated that down into a smaller group where I was like, oh, this
You,
is the group I was supposed to be with because
yeah,
they're doing similar things or they've done them. And we have, you know, we talk about our families, we talk about loss and grief and where we thought we would be and why we aren't there and
mhm,
being each other's rock, right? Like that's
mhm,
you don't get a lot of chances later in life to make new friends like this. And when that happened, I was like, okay, this is my new energy. When I came back to New York, it's like I'm going to get after it. And
right.
it was very much what I needed to continue this next chapter were these people. They just lit me back up.
Yeah. We were just watching The Bear, the new season, and there the comment that stuck out to me is like one of the chefs asked this other woman, he's like, what's your secret to like I'm gonna not say it perfectly, but something about like keeping your energy up and like staying so like motivated and like present. And she's like, well, I don't know if it's a secret, but I just like hang out with people that are smarter than me and people that are like more motivated than me. And he was like, oh, at work? And she's like, no, I didn't say at work. Like, I mean, outside of work. Right. And so the essence of just, yeah, like who are the people that you are intentionally choosing to really keep in your inner circle, right? I think I read another book too, talk about like our inner and outer circle. And we can have lots of people that can go in and out of those. Sometimes they just totally get removed over time. And there's nothing wrong with it. We don't have to verbalize like you're my inner circle. You're my, like it's something we just know. But our inner circle should be the people who, like you said, are on our wavelength, who are really supporting our dreams, who are not holding us back, who are not bringing us down, who we're not carrying more of the weight, who there's more of that equal enough as life can be balanced. And I think we have so much guilt. I hear from clients, from people sometimes of like, oh, but they've been my friend for 20 years. Okay, it doesn't matter. Like you don't owe them anything. Like they still don't have to be like, no, never again will you speak to them, but it's okay if they move to your outer circle. Made sense they were in your inner circle in first grade and in even college, but does it make sense now? Maybe not. And there's no hard feelings. You don't even have to have this direct dialogue about it. It's just sort of, you don't need to keep putting that same level of energy in if it's not being reciprocated and if it's just not serving you in the same way. Right. And so giving yourself permission to really, like you said, what is my life? How am I living for me, not for everyone else? Because I was also the one that was often single. I also don't have kids. I also had more flexibility and I would be everywhere doing everything. And on some level, I enjoyed it, but on another level, it was like, but I would get really disappointed when it came time like for me and none of them would be there. Or like there would be something always in the way for my birthday or my wedding or my this or my that. And it was like, Jesus, the years of stuff I poured into some of these relationships to get so little back, for better or worse. I'm not saying it's malicious or mean, but it just put in perspective, like, then where do I actually want to be putting my energy? And I want it in the relationships that can give me back something equal. And that's okay if it's different people in a different season, you know?
Yeah. Well, it's when that burden, you feel that becomes a burden instead of it becoming something you're like, oh, I'm so excited to have a conversation with you, or, I'm so excited to go on a trip and go back and see them. And it's hard. It's really hard. Like I don't know the last time I've had maybe like one of my friends recently come visit and stay, and she has every excuse in the world. She has ALS, and this girl has been up here twice, 3 times, seen my apartment, right? So that's the kind of perspective that I have out of my connections and my relationships.
Like, she's showing up.
She's showing up for me. Like, so, I show up for her. But she's been one of my closest friends since we met when we were in college. But those types of connections, so I was like, okay, that's that kind of vibration that you need, where that's the perspective that you need in your life. Also, not only is that relationship giving, like, she's just been such a wonderful friend and almost a sister my whole life, or most of my life now, I feel like my whole life.
Yeah.
But now I have this other perspective of life from her. Yeah. And how sweet it is, and how much importance you're putting on things, because your time and your energy isn't always going to be there. And what do I want to invest in? Yeah, it's like imagine your time was money. What would you put that money into?
Yeah. And who would help use that and foster that in the best way?
Right. Exactly.
Good perspective.
But it's funny how you say that a lot of your clients say, I feel guilty letting go. Because you do, because there were such really great times, and you honor those moments, and that love isn't necessarily lost. It's just, maybe we can connect. It's just, we gotta walk away for now.
Right.
And because if you keep trying to force that,
it's only gonna end in like something bad, probably.
Exactly.
Or being resentful or bitter, or, yeah.
And you're not opening yourself up for the things that are right in front of you that you need at this moment in time, that those people, and to letting those people in and being vulnerable again, and not being guarded or jaded because, oh, I've had these friends and they didn't do these things for me.
Exactly. And I think someone once told me, not everyone can be everything to you. And I always tell that to myself, because it's also like nothing had to have happened. Nothing had to be wrong. No one had to be the good or bad guy. Sometimes just like that person can't be that thing you need for you, and that is okay. But that doesn't mean you're not allowed or shouldn't go seek the person who can be that thing for you, or to find other supports that can be that thing too. And I think sometimes we use this word best friend, or even like husband, boyfriend, girlfriend, partner, like imagining that title means they're, or mom, dad, whoever,
Right.
like they're supposed to do everything. Like they're your mom, they're your husband, they're your best friend, but they still have limitations. Like they're still, that is still the role they can fill is that role, nothing else. And so it's like we just put too much all or nothing or too much stress and pressure of needing just like these one or two humans to like figure it all out for us. And I think if we can kind of see things for what they are and really
Mhm.
embrace and use them for that, and then have this space for this and this space for this, we're all going to feel a lot better, more fulfilled, um,
Yeah,
and get more of what we need and want, and have like healthier relationships as a result. You know,
absolutely. You can't be everything to everyone. Everyone can't be everything to you. So
yeah,
you learn how to
it's
balance.
dream. God, I'm yeah, like a lot of stress stuff to be everything to someone. Like I
Right.
only know so much. So
It's I think it's just that maturing cycle, but I think we're also like taught to not let go of good things because you don't know when the next one's going to come, and that fear of
yeah,
not having that connection replaced.
yeah,
And but like that's where you grow, and that's where you actually live your real life, where you're like, when I came back to New York and none of my friends had really moved back here,
you're
everyone,
like,
what are
ooh,
you doing? I was like, I don't know, but I just know I'm supposed to go back. I
yeah,
know I'm supposed to go back. Well, legally I had to because of work. I signed that I was going to move back.
right.
But
So
moved back wanting to,
yeah,
and I just, someone invited me to go somewhere. I said yes. Getting out of my comfort zone, being vulnerable, going to
yeah,
concerts I didn't really like the music to. Now they're like, why don't you ever want to go to these concerts? Well, I didn't really want to go in the first place. I just wanted to meet you guys and
right,
see
right,
if this would be good friendships. But I got to do a lot of crazy different things I would have never said yes to typically because of
yep,
that.
yep. I love that.
Yeah, and work, I mean, and work got me here too. So
Yeah,
I think someone mold me in my career was always priority.
yeah,
And as I moved here, I realized, oh my God, I need to put so much more emphasis on my personal life.
right.
And because my career got me to a certain point, I think I was able to be around the people that are bringing me so much joy now and focus, and aren't
Yeah,
yet people and tell me when I'm being an idiot.
yeah,
And,
yeah,
like finally some people that I'm like, okay,
yeah,
I can be myself in front of you and not be afraid you're gonna run away.
yeah. No, definitely. So what might be a few just like thoughts to leave folks with around what are some quick and more practical ways that you can foster or nurture connections ongoing? Like how do you kind of do that? Or what are some ways as people are thinking and hearing us talk, like, but what, how can they kind of take something away to really do something?
I'm a communicator. So I also know, like, again, being authentic and self-aware, like I also know kind of my role in how I play in my friend groups or in my
Mhm.
relationships. I check in a lot.
Mm,
So it can be a text, it could be like I see something on an Instagram story and I'm like, that's adorable. How are you? I will also like set calendar reminders to remind myself when certain things are happening,
yeah,
uh, to say like, oh my gosh, how was that? Like, did you enjoy that party? How was the retirement party? How was your move? Like,
yeah,
those are
yeah,
just to make sure you remember, because those little small things, again, you're always making sure that connection's still there, even if you're not in
right,
person.
right,
I do try to make sure I meet, people here if I haven't seen someone in like 3 or 4 weeks because we've been out of touch, out of town. Let's get a coffee, let's have a drink. It's work, right? It's
yeah,
managing your calendar and making
yeah,
sure that's in there as well. So I think that's a big thing is like checking in. If it's just, hey, hi, just want to say hi. How are
yeah,
you?
yeah,
Thinking about you. It's amazing how that can make someone feel,
yeah,
um, and how much they maybe needed it that day.
mhm,
Um, Another thing is I'm very good about not being judgmental. So even if I'm like, I would never do that, I wouldn't say that to a friend. I would sit and listen,
yeah,
and I think that's big too. I think we love our opinions and we love to judge in the shoes that we walk in, but we
yeah,
haven't walked that path. We haven't walked in those shoes.
yeah.
And that I think is also where you can share and where you can uplift and where you can say, okay, maybe here's, if you want my advice, here's how I would have tried that differently, or
Yeah.
here's what I would do now, or,
Yeah.
we're going to get through it. Right. And you check in on that person. And so those things I think are checking in all the time, little tiny highs, little wins. And then also being there for the big stuff and
Mhm.
not
Mhm.
rubbing it in their faces, 10 months later when something bad happens, or
Right,
it's
right,
hard to be a good friend.
right, right. No,
It's hard to be a good friend.
so true.
Uh, so I think those things, and we talked about a lot of the other ones, like showing up authentically and making sure you do still have your own set of boundaries. And because you gotta put the mask on first before you can help the person next to you. So if you're exhausted on zero, then you can't help anybody, or you can't be a good friend because you can't
Right,
be anything yourself.
right.
So I'm taking those rest and recharge times. Like I had this weekend unnatural. I didn't want it, but when
Planned,
you're sick,
but your
you're
body.
sick. When you're sick, you're sick. So now I'm ready to go see my friends and
Yeah,
have some cocktails this weekend and
yeah.
see what everyone's been up to. But I think those are, for me, those are the big ones. It's like making sure you're always living your truth
Mhm,
and connecting with people that also are on that path,
mhm.
and just establishing that trust and that vulnerability and seeing where it takes you.
Yeah, I love
Yeah,
it.
I
No,
love it.
that's so good. And I think it is helpful, just like it doesn't have to be big all the time. The small things that
No.
don't take too much time, the Instagram meme that you send, the little text, just like the happy birthdays, like I make sure to have those on calendars, like that goes a long
Yeah,
way. And we need the bigger stuff at times, but we don't need to do nothing. Like there can be the small maintenance that is very practical and applicable and can really actually be surprisingly nutritious for us too, right? Like I sent a few texts yesterday and like got to connect with some people and hear some things that I was not planning on. I just want to say hi. And it's always like a nice little burst of energy and a good moment. So
yeah,
good
exactly.
reminders.
I totally agree
Well,
with you.
thank you so much for being here today. Is there anything else that you want to share, promote, anything else I'm missing before we pop off?
Mm, just promote you, share you.
I love it. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. I'll see you all next Tuesday and have a good rest of your day.